Right, okay, I have jumped over to the shading models level 0002. I'm just going to go through the different shading models in materials. I'm going to combine a few of these into one video just because there's not loads to say about all of them. But yeah, we're going to break them all down one by one. So first one here is the Unlit. This is the simplest and most basic. It ignores all of the lighting from the scene. That makes it very cheap. It's not using any lighting calculations, any shading, anything like that. It can be used for a lot of stylized rendering. So if you're doing cell shading like that, where you're faking the lighting yourself within the material, that works. Or most commonly when we're doing with glowing objects, so emissive. So often used with additive or with things like modulate to get those kinds of effects. But can also be used with opaque, it's not a problem. Most of the input pins get disabled because they don't work, because they're to do with lighting and lighting calculations, and so we just have this emissive value taking the material values here and just rendering them straight to screen. You might notice this red is slightly different from this red. There's a tone mapper happening here. If you want to know more about the tone mapper, I did a video about that. So check that out on YouTube. Effectively, it's trying to represent what our eye naturally does with glowing values, whereas here in the material editor, it's just showing us the red value. The material editor doesn't have HDR, it doesn't have bloom, it doesn't have any of these things. So you can see we've got a nice bright glowing red sphere over here, but this red here is just rendering as just pure red. And so these values do not go anything over 1. So there's some discrepancy between these two, but that's probably fine. Another reason why to use the viewport in your world, because this will have potentially a different post-process. So that tone mapper I just mentioned might be different in different parts of the world, depending on how your game or level is set up. And so you might get different values here to the final one in the world. That's Unlit. Moving on to logically lit, that's the second one in here. This is what most materials are going to be, just taking lighting information from the world and rendering to our material. We talked about this when we looked at the PBR settings in blend modes in this previous set of videos, but we can change the metallic, we can change the roughness whenever we need. We can have a normal input. This is going to be most of our materials in let's do normal noise. Here we are. Most of our materials in our world. Works very nicely. Yeah, trying to be as visually accurate as possible. Not always successful, but there we are. Just put this back, make it a little bit nicer. And there we are. Shiny surface. So anything that reacts to light is going to want to be, or anything that simply reacts to light is going to want to be using the default lit. And the other shading models are designed for things that react with light in a more complex way. So the one that's simpler is unlit. Default lit will be 90% of what you're doing, and then occasionally we'll have more complex ones, and we'll cover all of those one by one in the next few videos.